It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. With me today from Washington, D.C. is my colleague, Nick Harper. Hello, Nick.
I'm here in Washington, D.C. It's 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we'll get you the latest from Israel as forces continue to push into Gaza. And as France holds an 18-nation summit, we'll bring you all the reaction to the unfolding humanitarian crisis. But first, the headlines.
Israel claims to have taken over a Hamas stronghold in northern Gaza after a 10-hour battle as people leave North Gaza for the south. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd arrives in New Delhi ahead of the 5th India-US 2+2 dialogue on Friday. India reiterates the need for zero tolerance for terrorism, calls for immediate release of hostages under Hamas's control, 38 tons of humanitarian assistance sent by India to the region. And French President Emmanuel Macron calls for continuous flow of humanitarian aid at a Paris conference of world leaders on Gaza. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is in India's national capital, New Delhi, for the 5th India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue. He was received by his Indian counterpart, Rajnath Singh, and the Chief of Defense Staff, General Anil Chauhan. The U.S. Defense Secretary was accorded the Guard of Honor upon his arrival. Singh and Austin, along with Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, will be co-chairing the 2+2 dialogue. Singh and Austin are also expected to discuss a range of strategic and defense issues during this bilateral dialogue. And Austin had last visited India in June 2023. Arindam Bagchi, spokesperson for India's Ministry of External Affairs, during a weekly briefing stated that India is open to discussing various issues in the 2+2 dialogue, including Israel and Canada, as raised by the media.
Yes, as you know, the 2+2 is tomorrow. I think Secretary of Defense, U.S. Secretary of Defense has just landed, and we're expecting Secretary Blinken a little later in the evening. Tomorrow is there. I'm not going to try to prejudge the conversations. I guess, considering the nature of our relationship and the strategic, global strategic partnership, a variety of issues are discussed, including topical issues, regional developments. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I certainly wouldn't like to prejudge it.
While addressing media at the White House, National Security spokesperson John Kirby said that India is a key strategic partner to the U.S. and is dedicated to further strengthening the ties between the two countries.
But India is a key strategic partner, and I think you saw that on full display when Prime Minister Modi was here. But we'll leave it to the Indian government and the Prime Minister to decide what their stance is going to be on any particular crisis or contingency around the world, to include the Middle East. But they remain a key strategic partner, and we're dedicated to advancing that partnership every single day.
Now, DD India's correspondent Jessica Taneja joins us live on this story. Jessica, what direction do you think the 2+2 dialogue will take tomorrow?
Well, lots on the agenda so far, but you heard from the spokesperson for the Ministry of External Affairs who said that we'll have more clarity on what all is to be discussed. So far, what we know is the security cooperation is something that will be in focus. Apart from that, of course, talks on the current Middle East crisis, on Russia-Ukraine as well. Apart from that, the discussion would also focus on if there is any conversation around the India-Canada standoff and the turmoil there. That also perhaps the Indian side says that it's open to discuss and it's happy to discuss as to whatever comes out of that. So far, the 2+2 ministerial dialogue from the year it was launched in 2016 has been able to achieve a lot, Tanvi. If you look at the foundational pact signed between the two, there will be a review of progress on the Comcasa. In fact, even on the initiative of critical emergent technologies, which was further cemented just earlier this year in January when the two NSAs of the countries met. So we're looking at a lot of review and progress and also focusing on the Indo-Pacific strategy, something which America has been looking at India as an important player in the region.
All right. Now, as you mentioned, the Indian side hasn't ruled out the possibility of discussion on the Canada diplomatic standoff and the Middle East crisis. Could you tell us and our viewers a bit more about it?
Well, so far, Tanvi, India has maintained that it is, of course, it condemns the attacks on the terrorist attacks by Hamas on Israeli soil. At the same time, India has also called for humanitarian pauses, just like other countries in the Gaza Strip. India also, in fact, sent aid to Gaza just last week. So, of course, and it was also pressed for two-nation theory for the two. That is what India's stance has been. And so far, when it comes to America has clearly stated that India is a strategic partner and it can choose to probably have its own alliances and have its own strategic convergences it wishes to have and its own issues to discuss. It's up to the country to deal with whatever geopolitical calculations that are in front of it. Coming back to Canada, though, we do know that the threats were issued by the Sikhs for Justice leader, Mr. Pannu, just last week along the lines of Air India bombing, and that somehow has led to some action wherein the Delhi airport and the Punjab airport, the restrictions on people to access, to have access to the entire to have access inside the airport would be slightly difficult. So all the security mechanisms have been put in place, but this is something that we know so far. Both of this will be discussed a lot more elaborately, and we'll know that tomorrow when the details are given out as to what was discussed in the 2+2 ministerial dialogue between the two nations.
Thank you. Jessica Taneja reporting to us from New Delhi. On to West Asia now. Israeli forces continue to fight Hamas terrorists among the ruins in the north of the Gaza Strip on Thursday. My colleague Nick Harper is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Nick, it's over to you now.
Thanks, Tanvi. Well, Israeli troops eliminated Ibrahim Abu Maksib, the head of Hamas's anti-tank missile unit, as the Israel-Hamas war entered its 34th day. It comes as Israeli forces fought Hamas through shell-blasted buildings in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Earlier, the Israeli army struck a Hamas tunnel situated near southern Gaza in a joint operation between the IDF and a unit of the Israeli Combat Engineering Corps.
We saw 50,000 Gazans move from the northern Gaza Strip to the south. They are moving because they understand that Hamas has lost control in the north and that the south is safer. There is no ceasefire. We are at war with Hamas. The public under Hamas is fleeing south because they understand that Hamas is using them as human shields. There are humanitarian pauses. We are not at war with the population of Gaza. We are at war with Hamas, who is holding our people
at the humanitarian crisis and the increasing civilian toll. India's External Affairs Ministry spokesperson has said that India has expressed concerns at the humanitarian crisis and the increasing civilian toll in the Israel-Gaza conflict.
We made our position clear, or we have made our position clear on multiple occasions, including during the UN General Assembly debate, I think on October 27th. We have strongly condemned the horrific terrorist attack on Israel, urged the need for zero tolerance for terrorism, and called for immediate and unconditional release of hostages. We have also conveyed our deep concern at the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and the increasing civilian toll, and welcomed efforts to de-escalate the situation and provide humanitarian assistance. India has also sent 38 tons of humanitarian relief material. We have emphasized the need for strict observance of international humanitarian law. We have also urged the parties to de-escalate, eschew violence and work towards creating conditions for an early resumption of direct peace negotiations towards a two-state solution.
Meanwhile, in Paris, delegations from more than 80 countries and international organisations are meeting for a humanitarian conference. Leaders from Egypt, Jordan and the Gulf Arab countries, as well as Western powers and G20 members, not including Russia, are present. Speaking at the conference, French President Emmanuel Macron said there must be a continuous flow of humanitarian aid, including fuel.
We share values and have common commitments that bring us here today, and in line with Israeli and Palestinian authorities, we worry about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Civilians must be protected. That is absolutely indispensable and non-negotiable, and is an immediate necessity. And in the long term, that is also even a condition of efficiency for our fight against terrorists.
Moving on to US news, in Miami, 5 contenders aiming to impede Donald Trump's progress towards securing the 2024 Republican presidential nomination engaged in their 3rd debate. The debate was characterized by intense arguments regarding abortion policy, immigration and China. In the midst of the debate, the candidates took jabs at President Biden while only briefly criticizing the former president, Donald Trump. Meanwhile, in New York, Donald Trump's daughter has distanced herself from financial documents at the heart of a civil trial taking place in Manhattan. Ivanka Trump took to the witness stand on Wednesday, facing questions about her work at the Trump Organization. The former president of the United States is accused of inflating his wealth to secure better loans from banks. He denies any wrongdoing, calling the trial a scam. DD India's Sally Patterson reports from New York City.
Ivanka Trump is the 4th member of her family to take the stand here in New York City. Her brothers, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., faced questions of their own last week, where they basically said they left financial statements to their accountants. Ivanka repeated a similar narrative, saying she wasn't aware of having any role in preparing them. "I'm not an accountant," she told the court. Donald Trump's eldest daughter worked at the Trump Organization until 2017. Court filings claim that during her time there, Ivanka was involved in negotiating and securing financing for several properties. That includes a hotel in Washington, D.C. and golf resort near Miami. But many questions remain over emails and documents which date back more than a decade. Ivanka said she couldn't recall details within them. She was originally listed as a co-defendant in this case, but her lawyers successfully argued her involvement with the Trump Organization had passed the statute of limitations. But she was still brought in as a witness, despite trying to get out of doing so, and flew in to New York. Because she's not a defendant, though, no cameras were allowed inside the courtroom to take her picture before proceedings began. Despite attempts to distance herself from the case, prosecutors allege Ivanka was very much involved in the family company. Speaking outside the court, Attorney General Letitia James said the former president's daughter was inextricably tied to the company. Prosecutors claim the Trump Organization knowingly misled lenders, inflating Donald Trump's wealth to secure favorable loans. He's called the trial politically motivated and an attempt by his political opponents to keep him out of the White House. He could be forced to fork out millions of dollars in damages and be banned from doing business in his home state. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Hollywood actors have been celebrating the end of their months-long strike after their union, the SAG-AFTRA, reached a tentative deal with major studios valued at more than $1 billion. SAG-AFTRA said the agreement involves a new 3-year contract that includes raises to minimum salaries, new streaming participation bonuses, and protections against unauthorized use of their images generated by artificial intelligence. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken made a dig at Russia for its military cooperation with North Korea. Russia, he pointed out, is a member of the UN Security Council, and North Korea is ignoring many of the UN Security Council resolutions. Blinken has met South Korea's president, the foreign minister and national security advisor in Seoul before flying on to India as part of a 9-day tour of the Middle East and Asia. DD India's correspondent Andrew Wood sent us this report from Hong Kong.
Well, the United Nations Security Council has condemned and sanctioned North Korea many times. It's very isolated in theory as a result, mainly because of its nuclear weapons program and its missile program as well, intercontinental ballistic missile program. Now, Mr. Blinken said that really, he didn't use the word hypocrisy, but he was certainly hinting that Russia is a bit of a hypocrite here. If it's a member of the Security Council, that it supported these resolutions, and yet it is doing business with North Korea, and North Korea is ignoring those measures issued by the Security Council. Now, Mr. Blinken, given this, he made these comments after talking to the South Korean president, the South Korean foreign minister, and the South Korean national security advisor. This was very much showing how America is standing together. Well, I think that's the intention, to show that America is standing together with South Korea over the issue of North Korea and China as well. But Mr. Blinken was also staying on the subject of the United Nations. He was also looking forward to a time next year when South Korea becomes a non-permanent member of the Security Council for 2 years. It was elected to be a member of the Council by a vast majority of UN member states back in the summer. So with South Korea on the UN Security Council, with Japan as well, which is next year will be in its 2nd year of non-permanent membership of the Security Council, Mr. Blinken said he was looking forward to having more support on the Security Council for the American, South Korean and Japanese point of view, especially on issues such as the Middle East, Ukraine and, of course, North Korea. In Hong Kong, I'm Andrew Wood reporting for DD India.
Now on to updates from the Russia-Ukraine war. On Thursday, 5 people were killed in a missile strike by Ukraine's armed forces on the town of Skadovsk in the Russian-controlled part of Ukraine's Kherson region. In other news, a Russian missile damaged a Liberian-flagged civilian vessel entering a Black Sea port in the Odessa region, killing 1 and injuring 4 others. The vessel was supposed to be transporting iron ore to China. Meanwhile, reacting to the recent attack, Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister said that the alternative Black Sea export corridor is still operational. This attack is part of a string of attacks by Russia against the port infrastructure of Ukraine, particularly after Moscow withdrew from the agreement mediated by the United Nations that ensured the safe transit of grains across the Black Sea. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Tanvik, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Nick. Nick Harper joining us from Washington. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Winter session of Indian Parliament to begin on 4th of December. And pre-Diwali celebrations at 10 Downing Street as UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and wife Akshata Murthy celebrate the Festival of Lights in London.
Climate change is wreaking havoc across the world. It's time to save the Earth or face extinction. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're with us on DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Back to New Delhi now. The winter session of India's Parliament will commence from the 4th of December and will continue till 22nd of December. While announcing the dates on the social media platform X, India's Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, Prasar Bharati, said that the winter session will be held in the new Parliament building and will have 15 sittings spread over 19 days. The India Pavilion at the Gulf Food Manufacturing Expo in Dubai displays a wide array of value-added agro-products and packed foods. The three-day event started on Tuesday is hosting 157 Indian exhibitors who are showcasing India's prowess in the food and beverage industry. The India Pavilion of Gulf Food Manufacturing was inaugurated by the Consul General of India at Dubai, Satish Kumar Sivan. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The Pacific Islands Forum regional bloc of 18 nations discussed climate change. Rising sea levels and worsening storms caused by climate change were the main points of discussion. Australia, one of the world's largest exporters of coal and gas, has committed to reduce emissions by 43% by the year 2030. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo inaugurated Southeast Asia's largest floating solar power plant, an initiative to increase renewable energy sources and switch away from coal. The solar power infrastructure is the third largest floating solar power plant in the world. A massive fire engulfed a chemical plant in Texas, triggering evacuations and stay-at-home orders. Residents living within the 5-mile radius of the plant were instructed to remain indoors. American singer Lainey Wilson has won the Country Music Awards, CMAs, in Nashville, where she also won the Female Vocalist of the Year. Wilson won a total of 5 different awards, and she's the only singer to win 5 awards in CMAs after 2002.
This is all I've ever wanted to do. It's the only thing I know how.
Many Afghans who fear persecution if they return to Afghanistan have gone into hiding in Pakistan to avoid being detected by law enforcement agencies following a government policy to expel undocumented foreigners. Home to over 4 million Afghan migrants and refugees, about 1.7 million of them have been declared undocumented by Pakistan. Let's go to London. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak hosted a reception at his residence to celebrate the Festival of Lights, Diwali. He welcomed guests from the British Indian community to 10 Downing Street to mark the upcoming holiday. Our correspondent Julia Chapman reports from London.
Britain's first Hindu Prime Minister is celebrating his second Diwali at number 10 Downing Street. Rishi Sunak says he now associates Diwali with fond memories of becoming the country's leader around this time last year. In pictures shared on social media, the halls of the Prime Minister's home and office were adorned with marigolds and candles for the occasion. Sunak and his wife Akshata Murthy could be seen lighting a lamp and welcoming visitors. Addressing his guests, Sunak joked that he should swap allegiances in cricket to support India, given its winning streak. The reception included high-profile guests like the Indian High Commissioner and Bollywood stars, as well as children who recited Sanskrit verse. Sunak describes himself as a proud Hindu and reportedly makes regular visits to a temple in his native city of Southampton. On their recent visit to India for the G20 summit, Sunak and Murthy offered prayers at the Akshardham temple in New Delhi. The Prime Minister's office has shared good wishes to people around the world on the occasion of this Diwali. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
It's 9th of November today. 4 years ago on this day, the Kartarpur corridor between India and Pakistan was inaugurated, allowing devotees to visit the famous Gurudwara on the other side of the border. DD India's Jessica Taneja has filed this report.
The founder of Sikhism, Guru Nanak Dev, spent the last 18 years of his life here in Pakistan's Kartarpur district. This is the sacred ground where Guru Nanak Dev set up the first Sikh community, laid down the ethical principles, and handpicked the second Guru for the newly established religious faith. For more than 70 years, pilgrims could view Kartarpur Sahib only through a telescope lens. 4 years ago, an international human corridor was inaugurated, allowing Indian pilgrims to cross over into Pakistan visa-free.
9 नवंबर ही वो तारीख थी जब बर्लिन की दीवार गिरी थी। दो विपरीत धाराओं ने एकजुट होकर नया संकल्प लिया था। आज 9 नवंबर को करतारपुर साहिब कॉरिडोर की शुरुआत हुई है। इसमें भारत का भी सहयोग रहा है, पाकिस्तान का भी।
Despite decades of growing tensions between the two nations, this initiative sent out a message of peace which would eventually lead to better ties in the future. Today, the Kartarpur Sahib corridor holds great significance not just for Sikhs and Hindus, but also for Muslims who were equally devoted to Guru Nanak Dev. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
Next, an update on the 37th edition of the National Games that came to a glittering close at the Shama Prasad Mukherjee Indoor Stadium in Goa today. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar and Indian Olympic Association President P.T. Usha were among the host dignitaries who attended the closing ceremony. The National Games had begun in Goa on the 25th of October. Over 10,000 Indian athletes competed across 42 sporting disciplines. The state of Maharashtra bagged 228 medals, including 80 golds. The Services Sports Control Board finished in the second position with a total of 126 medals, while the Indian state of Haryana stood in the third position with 192 medals. So that's all in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at DD India Live. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.